Hello, it's the Pace Chaser. So welcome to part 2 of the Yorkshire Coastliner history. I did intend to do this in one part, but unfortunately, and I'm going to be honest here, I caught the camera and turned it off. So it's been split into two. As it was getting a bit long anyway. The first part is about half an hour long. I will put a link in the description to this one, to that part as well, if you haven't seen it, part 1. But we left part 1, we're looking at a 1994 timetable, but in terms of vehicles we got as far as 1996. So the next vehicles to be delivered after 1996 were some Volvo Olympians with Alexander Royale bodies, similar to the ones that we saw in part 1 that have been delivered in various batches. The 97 ones were 426 to 429, registered P426 to 429 UUG, and they were delivered in April 1997. And we start the video with 429 at North Bay in Scarborough, just about to go back to Leeds on the 843. Just to make clear, Yorkshire Coastliner didn't have quite the monopoly on the Yorkshire Coast services in the Blazefield group, basically. Keighley and District did run some summer routes as well, such as the 841 from Bradford and Keighley through to Scarborough. And you can see here one of their Leyland Olympians of Eastern Coachworks bodies, fleet number 369 603 NYG, seen parked up between runs in its Northern Rose coach livery and branding, and looking very, very nice indeed, it has to be said. So as I mentioned in part 1, Yorkshire Coastliner did operate other services apart from the main drag between Leeds and Scarborough, Whitby and Bridlington. They also operated some local services around Malton and some routes between York and Malton via the back roads. And they had some smaller vehicles with which to operate these services. And here we see one of them, Mercedes 811 Opta Star Rider number 483, registered E283TWW, seen on layover in Queen Street in York, just near the station, between runs on the 81 to Malton via Sheriff Hutton. April 1995 photograph, this one taken by myself. As I mentioned in part 1, most of the photos I've used are from my collection. I don't know who took them originally, there are a few to come that are used under Wikimedia Commons, and I'll credit those. Most of them from my collection, but I don't know the photographer. But this one, as I say, is one that I took. The bus was new to Chisholm of Ramsgate, trading as Sally Line, and then it passed to Luckett's of Watford, which I believe became part of one of the Blazefield subsidiaries. So it went across at some point to Yorkshire Coastliner. As you can see, it was used on the lesser routes, the more local routes around Malton and things. And then when they'd finished with it, it passed to Eager of Morton near Gainsborough in Lincolnshire. When Roadcar bought out Eager, Lincolnshire Roadcar, it passed over to Roadcar, and they converted it to a van, so they panelled over most of the side windows and used it as a buildings maintenance van. As we also mentioned in part 1, they operated the 93 Malton to Norton Townlink service, the local town service in Malton. For those unfamiliar, Norton is basically, without wanting to offend anybody who lives there, the same place. It's just the river runs through the middle. Malton's on one side and Norton's on the other, but to all intents and purposes it's the same town. So it's a town service that runs round the two towns, Malton and Norton, basically. And this bus, G921WGS, fleet number 421, was branded up for the Malton to Norton Townlink, as you can see on the side above the windows there. It's not actually working it, it's working the 81 between Malton and York via Sheriff Hutton. It's just arriving in York. It's coming out at the end of Piccadilly in this photograph. The bus was a Mercedes 709 with Reeve Burgess Beaver bodywork. It was new to AJS subsidiary County in February of 1990 in Welling Hatfield line livery. And as you can see, it passed on to Yorkshire Coastline. I believe it later worked in Harrogate after it had been to Yorkshire Coastline. It worked for Harrogate and District. So the previous photo and this one of the same bus just around the corner were taken in June 1996. And as you can see, with typical Yorkshire thrift, it wasn't branded on the off side, it was only done on the near side, so just branded one side of it. So some of the more unusual vehicles that worked for Blazefield were these Leyland Swifts. As I mentioned in part 1, in April 1989, Harrogate and District bought Harrogate Independent Travel. Now, Harrogate Independent Travel had bought some new Leyland Swifts, and Harrogate and District actually added some more as well. They seemed to take a liking to them. They were very strange vehicles. It was a truck-based chassis, so they were very high-floored. There were a lot of steps to get up to get into them, and they were quite loud. They were proper enthusiast buses, to be honest. They were really vocal to ride on, and quite basic. As I say, it was a truck chassis. They weren't refined in it by any means. So Yorkshire Coastliner had at least one of them for its more local routes. Fleet number 411, registered G112VMM. Fleet number 412 wasn't available, as we'll see in the next photo, so that's why it was numbered 411. Normally the fleet number and the registration number matched in some way. So the bus was new to Luckett's of Watford in October 1989. It passed to Harrogate Independent, and then it went to Yorkshire Coastliner for a bit, as we see here. It didn't last very long with Coastliner, as far as I'm aware. It was intended for the more local routes around Malton and the 81 through to York via Sheriff Hutton and the villages. But as we can see here in this shot, in January 1995, it had escaped to Leeds on the main service. It's in Leeds Central Bus Station on layover, waiting to go back to Thorntondale on the 842. That would have been quite some journey on that bus, all the way up to like Pickering and Thorntondale from Leeds. I really wish I'd been on it, actually. It'd been brilliant, wouldn't it? So Yorkshire Coastliner weren't averse to adding second-hand vehicles to the fleet to improve it if they needed to. And we see here the vehicle that was blocking the fleet number 412, registered A212SAE. It was a Leyland Tiger with Plaxton Paramount body. It was one of two acquired from Cheltenham and Gloucester in 1993. They had been new in 1983, so they were 10 years old when they came to Yorkshire Coastliner. And they became 412 and 413. As we said, that's 412, and we see it in Leeds in May 1995, waiting to work back, seemingly to Scarborough on the 843, although it may have changed. It's come in on the 843. It might have gone onto a different route to go back, we don't know. For a period of time, some of the Coastliner buses carried this kind of registration plate thing in the window that said via York when they were intended to work on the main service, just to stop people asking if it went via York. Some of the buses carried a big enough blind that they could put an intermediate point on it so they could show via York, but the ones that didn't, like this one, they put this little plate in the window that said via York just to answer passengers' inquiries, I guess. So as we said in part one, Yorkshire Coastliner took the first Alexander Royale body to be produced, and they also took the last, and indeed the last, Volvo Olympian chassis that went under it. The vehicle was 437 W437 CWX, another one of the batch that's seen here, and it was a review of a model of that bus that spawned this series. I will put a link in the description to the model review as well. So the final batch of Royals for Coastliner were long wheelbase. The other ones have been standard wheelbase, but these were long wheelbase. You can see it's got a shorter window in the middle that gives you the extra length. And there were 431 to 437, W431 to 437 CWX, delivered in June 2000. As I said, 437 was the last Volvo Olympian chassis to be produced. So 435 in this shot, W435 CWX, is seen in York, by the look of it in the Stonebow, in April of 2002. And it's coming in from Bridlington on an 845 service towards Leeds. As you can see, Leeds via Malton and York, they've put the intermediate points on the blind, rather than having a plate in the window. Now, as I mentioned in the model review video, the careers of the W-registered Olympians were cut short by the push towards low-floor vehicles. Now, the first low-floor vehicles to be taken by Yorkshire Coastliner were 6 Volvo B10 BLEs with renowned bodies that came in 2001 to 2002. They were followed by the first low-floor double-deckers for Yorkshire Coastliner, 438 to 440, which were Plaxton President-bodied Volvo B7TLs. And they arrived in April of 2002. And we see here 439, the middle one of the batch, registered YDO2 UMZ at Malton. It's fair to say they struggle a little bit. As we said in part one of this series, the route is very, very hard. It's a dual carriageway from Leeds to Tadcaster and York on the A64. Then it's a single carriageway after that. But there's a lot of high-speed running, non-stop running. Then there's a lot of stop-start as well in places like Leeds, Tadcaster, York and Malton. So it's a very, very difficult route for buses to operate. And the smaller engines on the B7TLs didn't always take kindly to it. They managed, but they weren't quite as convincing on it as the bigger 10-litre Olympians had been a few years earlier. You can see they updated the branding slightly for the low floor things. They've got the Relax in Style logo there, which appeared on some Harrogate buses as well, and I think some Keighley ones if I remember rightly. And instead of relying on the branding being above and below the windows in red, you've got this bit here, so Leeds, York, Malton, telling you how many services a day there are, and some arrows, it goes Pickering, Whitby, Scarborough, Farley and Bridlington, and then the older style red branding is just used for the sort of other points that it serves: Eden Camp, Flamingo Land and the North York Moors. There's a little note on the staircase panelling as well saying Leeds, Tadcaster, York, Malton, up to 34 journeys a day. So as we come towards the finish, we're going to look at some of the vehicles after the main period we're looking at. We're kind of stopping this series roughly about the early 2000s. So next, after the Plaxton Presents, were some Wright Eclipse Gemini-bodied Volvo B7TLs. 4 came in 2004, 6 in 2006. And in this view we see 2004 delivery number 404, registered YJ04LYP at York Station, heading for Scarborough via Malton, as you can see, on a route 843, service in September of 2007. This photo is by Canpack Swire, and it's shared under Wikimedia Commons License 2.0. A new livery and branding was introduced with these buses. As you can see, the Wave became larger, as did the Coastliner, but the Yorkshire got smaller. There was still a Yorkshire there, it's up there in smaller white letters, and you had these rather alarming looking stripes going up the back of it. It was quite a striking livery, but it was a bit of a shame to see the old blue and cream retired after quite a number of years. So something else I mentioned in part 1, again please check that out, I will put a link in the description, was that at various times Yorkshire Coastliner tried to introduce single deckers. They didn't always work, they weren't really big enough for the summertime loads, and as we said, when concessionary travel came in, free concessionary travel, they simply weren't big enough. That was it. There were a lot of people on the services, on the free passes, and why not? Can't blame them, but these weren't big enough, so they got transferred to other work. But various batches came in. They tended to find other work in the summer sometimes as well. The double deckers would be drafted in from elsewhere in Blazefield to do the services, while these found something they could cope with a bit more. But in this view we see some Volvo B7 RLEs with Wright Eclipse urban bodies. 6 of them were delivered in 2005, and 2 of them are seen here in this photo that was taken from the top of a double deck vehicle in Malton bus station in September 2007. And it's another one by Canpack Squire under the Wikimedia Commons license. Very, very nice shot indeed, and it shows the newer livery and branding on a single decker as well. So double deck wise, after the B7TLs came some B9TLs. There were 10 with Wright Eclipse Gemini bodies of a similar style to the B7s that arrived in 2008, and then 4 came with Wright Gemini 2 bodies, the updated version, in 2011, and 5 more with the same body, the Gemini 2, in 2012. The Gemini 2 is introduced with further new livery and branding, and we see 2012's 428 BF62UXY at Nestgate Corner in York in April 2014, modelling the updated livery and branding. And this photo is another one from Wikimedia Commons. It's by the Carlisle Kid. I should mention as well that by the time we're looking at now, most of the local services around Malton have been given up and gone to other operators. It just left the core network, the Leeds, York, Malton, and then either to Scarborough or up to Pickering, Thorntondale and Whitby. The Bridlington extension of the 845 was withdrawn in around 2020. It's quite controversial at the time because a lot of people kind of like using it, but it was withdrawn anyway, and it's not been reinstated up to press. I'm doing this video in 2025, May 2025, and it still hasn't been reinstated, and I'm not sure it will be, to be honest. So bringing us up to date with another logo and livery. The current one is Coastliner as it is now, not Yorkshire Coastliner, but we see here 3644, registered BN68XPT. Volvo B5TL with Wright Gemini 3 body. 10 of these arrived in 2016 and 2017, and 3 more in 2018, and 3644 is a 2018 arrival. These are the vehicles, as I'm doing this in 2025, that can be found on the route now. This is the branding and the livery that you can expect to see. This photo is by Malcolm XL5. Again, it's shared on Wikimedia Commons license 2.0. In this view, 3644 is in the Stoneboat in York in September of 2024. So again, it brings us right up to date. So I'll just finish this video and the series with a couple of depot shots. The first one is not of Malton, as you can see. It's of Mance Lane Depot in Knaresborough, which acted as a kind of central hub for the Blazefield companies. Anything sort of new coming in, anything old transferring out, anything transferring between companies went to Mance Lane for a bit of time for storage. And here we can see, if I just move the camera around slightly, there's a couple of little lynxes in this one there and one there. There's some little Olympians with Northern Counties bodies. These are ones that had been new to Harrogate and District. I don't know if they were still working for Harrogate or if they were transferring to somewhere else. You've got an Eastern Coachworks bodied Harrogate Olympian there. A lot of these would have still been in service with Harrogate. I think they use it for full-size buses, and the little depot at Starbeck, the taken over from Harrogate Independent, was used for the minibuses at this point. But on the end is the bus that interests us. This is Yorkshire Coastliner, fleet number 427P427UUG. Presumably it had just been delivered from Alexander's at Falkirk. It's got... oops, sorry, hang on. Yeah, apologies for that. The rustic charm of these videos, or them being a bit rubbish, whichever way you look at it. But yeah, presumably it just arrived from Alexander's at Falkirk, and it was brand new. As you can see, it's got a number blinding that's set to 427, the fleet number, but it's not got a destination blind fitted as yet. That's just been left off. So yeah, brand new and waiting further delivery on to Malton. I just found there's a view of Malton Depot itself, the headquarters of Yorkshire Coastliner. Still there to this day. A bit more branding on it now, a few more signs and things. But I took this view in 1995. You can see one of the Optare Star Riders and one of the ex-Cheltenham Leyland Tigers standing there. Weirdly, I didn't take a photo close-up of the buses. I didn't go walk up and take a photo of them. I just took this general shot. I was on a film camera at the time, and obviously film was limited, so I'm guessing that's why I didn't. But what an idiot, honestly. I should have gone and done that. But it's a lovely, lovely view. It shows the depot and the bus station next to it where the buses are standing. Really characterful view. Note the milk floats parked down the side as well, which, you know, is a period feature now, as it turns out. There's not many of those left in service. But yeah, a very, very nice view indeed. So that concludes this video, part 2 of the look at Yorkshire Coastliner. I will put a link in the description to part 1, and I'll also put a link in the description to the model review video of the Creative Master Northcord Yorkshire Coastliner Volvo Olympian that inspired the series. As I mentioned in the model review, if it's the first model of a particular operator that I've done, I normally include a history of the operator. But with Coastliner it became too complicated too quickly. It would have been far too long-winded. Part 1 of this little series was about half an hour long. This is 18 minutes, so it would have been 50 minutes going through the history of Coastliner. In the middle of a model review, it wouldn't have worked. So I will put a link in the description to part 1 of this, and also to the model review. But as always, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed the videos, and take care, and I will see you again soon. Bye for now.